2 weeks ago when we left off. There we go. And we're rolling live. Okay.
You want to back up to the beginning of Sif Beis?
Yes, exactly what I'm going to do. The parts of the Shulchan Aruch, I'll just remind us that the Mishnah really read. I'll just remind us outside. But let's reread the Shulchan Aruch because then there were some pieces starting with Sif Katan Dal that we didn't get to last time, which really I don't know if they were surprising to everybody last time, but we mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. You might have to turn a couple of pages back from where we were, but Sif Beis had read Noshim Chayavos B'Kiddush Af Al Pishu Mitzvahs Aseh She'azman Grama. Women are obligated in Kiddush on Friday night, even though it is a mitzvah Aseh. It's a positive mitzvah that is bound by time. By the mitzvah of Kiddush on Friday night can only be done on Friday night. And so, therefore, it is bound by time, and it is a positive mitzvah because it's learned from the pasuk Zachor es Yom HaShabbat l'Kadsho. You shall recall the day of Shabbat to sanctify it. And mishum, how come they are obligated? Usually, women are off the hook on mitzvah aseh shazman grama, and the answer is here mishum the itkash zachor l'shamor, because there is a hekesh, there is a textual connection between Zachor and Shamor. First time it appears in the Ten Commandments appear in the Torah. They are it says Zachor es Yom HaShabbos, and then in Va'eschanan it says Shamor es Yom HaShabbos. And we mentioned last time in the Mishnah Berurah that there's idea of Zachor and Shamor b'divrei echad, or they were said at the same. These were really they were said at the same time. Only Kadosh Baruch Hu can say two things at the same time. And since and since the women are relevant to the shmira, to the negative commandments, the don't do's of Shabbos, they are also, because of this hekesh, because of this textual connection, also they're also relevant now in the category of the Zechira, of the positive mitzvos of Shabbos. So, and there are sheets over here. That's what we read last time, and then we concluded with the really straightforward connection between that point and this point, which is umotzios es anoshim. Women can be motzi men, motzia men. They can discharge the obligation of men by their own kiddush if the men are listening to their kiddush. Hoel v'chayavos min haTorah, kamosam, since they are obligated on a Torah level like them. Now, let's take a look at Sif Katan Dalad. This gets to the core of the issue, or this is the most surprising thing, perhaps, of this whole piece, is the women can help discharge the obligation of men. It's rarely the case that such a thing occurs in halacha, that that women can discharge the obligation of a man. But the truth is that it's not quite as infrequent as we might think. So let's take a look here at Sif Katan Dalad. The Mishnah writes, "V'chein iskimu hataz u'magen Avram v'hagra u'she'arei achonim," and this is it's Memvav. No, actually, Memvav. Yes, correct, exactly. Turn right there. It's Sif Katan Dalad in the Mishnah Berurah. So the Mishnah Berurah cites the Taz, the Magen Avram, who are the two commentators you'll find on the side of the Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim, and the Vilna Gaon, the Gra. And others, he says, and other Achronim too, other later authorities too, who all agree with this psak halacha that women are able to discharge the obligation of men by their own making of kiddush. Now, not surprisingly, here we're going to find a mentioning of a chumrah. When we call makom, yesh lahachmir lechatchila, I always find that phrase fascinating. Okay. Nevertheless, usually machmer lechatchila. There are those that are yesh lahachmer. There are those that are machmer ideally, meaning everybody agrees that by letter of the law, there's no question women can discharge the obligation of men. That is not even the argument of this. Lechatchila, machmir lechatchila means that if I'm, machmir b'di'eved, then it's good, right? So, shelo totzi isha anashim she'ena mibnei beisa, dezila milsa. That a woman should not discharge the obligation of men who are not in her household. Why? Because the zila milsa, the lowly matter. She should do that. But what I find fascinating is here, no one, less man de pali, that if it's just husband and wife and kids around the table, wife can make kiddush lechatchila, according to everybody. Okay? And according to some, namely the Elia Rabbah and I think that's the Divrei Chaim, sure. She should make the kiddush when there are guests over, because it's not nice. It's not becoming. Simeon, I see. Cool. She's just saying the kiddush. Shirei Kodesh is the whole kula about Shirei Kodesh, that if she sings, that if a woman is singing songs that relate to that there's miros and things like that, it's not an issue. Some people disagree with that, but let's assume she just says the kiddush. There's no obligation that you have to. And even if you just do it in a chanty tune, if you do it with a nusach, I don't know that that's singing. You're doing it with nusach, okay, I would say it's more like chanting. Yeah, so, let's say she even just said it. She wants to be. You go to the choladeos. She says the kiddush. Yes, go ahead, Simeon.
Yes, Rav, I personally have difficulty with certain segments of our Jewish society that invent interpretations, and whether it's the wearing of a black hat or something else, and then that suddenly becomes a Jewish thing. You have here the Mishnah Brura is going against a lo saseh midoraisa. How could he do such a thing?
Which lo saseh is he going against?
The Shamar, Zohar. She has the same obligation. The obligation is such that she can be motzi men. Why limit it that? Where does that limitation? What is it based on? What reality does it fulfill?
Meaning, you're asking, where is the yesh lechatchila lahachmir coming from? Is that what you're asking? Like, what's the halachic basis for the chumrah here? Meaning that on a very legal level, it makes sense. There is this cause for her mitzvah sasesha zman grama to here to not be a ptur, right? Because of the connection between zachor and shamor. So once we say that women are equally obligated, so then it should be an opportunity here for women to not be. It flows in all directions. Men can be motzi women, women can be motzi men. It shouldn't matter. You're asking. Let me just make sure I understand. You're asking in this fifth katan that we just read, where did the Mishnah Brura, citing the Elia Rabbah and the Divrei Chaim, come from with this chumrah? Oh, he just dropped. I feel bad. Okay, but I was going to actually answer the question without him even asking it. So hopefully I'll come back on. We'll catch him. We'll catch him up. So I want to read the Aruch HaShulchan on this matter. Okay, you don't have that in front of you, so just listen. So the Aruch HaShulchan says, he quotes the Shulchan Aruch, and he says the following: "Afilu hasavrim the kiddush al kosmin derabanan, the min haTorah yotzim betfila, v'kol makom shavim ha'anashim v'anashim v'chol the tikun rabbanan ke'in da'oraisa tikun." So first things first. He says, even according to those who say that the kiddush on wine, the wine part of it is only made rabbanan, right? When you hold the wine, and because in a Torah you can be yotzei with the tefillah, right? You say vayachulu and tefillah, you're good to go. We were in Sif Beis, we just did Sif Katan Dal, Reish Ayin Al. And nevertheless, though, our Shulchan says here that men and women are equal here on this one because of the Zachor Shamor connection. The whole the Tikkun Rabbanon ke'ein da'oraisa Tikkun, and the mitzvah of the say, well, but on the The wine part is a mitzvah sasesha asman grama. Zachor and Shomer, I get min Torah. She has the mitzvah of kiddush, but I can fulfill that with my words, not with wine. But he says that would not work. That's a very flawed argument. Say that the rabbis would split hairs here and say, well, on the wine you're potter, but the kiddush you're chayev. And he says when they make,
you mean the bread? Talk about the bread.
no, when they make kiddush on the wine,
right.
The wine is the rabbanon. Having wine at kiddush is the rabbanon. I mean, the right stuff, by just using my words, I can fulfill my mitzvah biblically of zachor es yom haShabbos HaKodshim. But so maybe you'll say the reason that men should make kiddush and not women should make kiddush is because on the wine bracha, on the bor priagafen, they can't help, because that's only midrabanan, and it's a mitzvah, and that's the positive time bound mitzvah to make to do it over wine. He says that doesn't make sense, because anytime the rabbis make a takana, they make it like a deoraisa. Called the rabbanan tikun ke'ein deoraisa tikun, right? Therefore, they parallel after the deoraisa here. The deoraisa is that men and women are equal. When they create the rabbinic part of the wine, it only makes sense that they made that part as well equal in terms of the level of obligation. And he says here, "V'gam nashim kain," that women. Just fixing this 1 second. That women, it says the gam noshim kain hu diminator yotas betfila va'alkos chayavos midrabanan. They are obligated in a Torah in the tefillah part, and on a cup of wine also they're obligated midrabanan. There's no tour. Im kain omdim bechara darga. They're all standing on one step, on one level, and therefore they can be motzi men. There's no reason that they can't discharge the obligation of a man. The yesh rotzim lomar, and there are those that want to say she'enon motzios anoshim, that they don't successfully discharge the obligation of men. Kemo b'Megillah, just like by Kriyas HaMegillah, which is in Siman Taf Reish Pei Tes, Sif Aleph over there. Let's take a look. I'm going to read. Nashim are obligated in Kriyas HaMegillah. Does anybody know why? Isn't it a positive time-bound mitzvah? Why? Good. They were also part of the miracle, right? The Jewish women were also as much threatened as Jewish men. That's that correct. Yeah. Correct. According to Tosfos, that's where Tosfos discusses how women were very much an integral part of the miracle by Yetzias Mitzrayim, by Hanukkah. Yehudis is mentioned there.
The whole Shamo comes from the actual saying that the Kiddush.
Zachor v'Shomor comes from the Torah. That the two times it appears in the Dibros appear. The first time it says Zachor. Look at the Torah, right? And then Yisro it says Zachor. Eschanan it says Shomor.
Yeah, how is that connected to the
because the teaching is we have to just figure out, well, why does the Torah has one version of the story and another version of the story? No, the answer is that actually the Chazal say that both of these words were said at the same time. But the problem is Moshe Rabbeinu can't put a Zachor / Shamor in the Torah. He can't do it. That's not how it works. So the first time he writes it with Zachor, and the second time HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to write it with Shamor. That way the Jewish people forever will know that I said both at the same time. In a miracle, only God's voice could emanate with two things coming out of it. And what we learn from this is that they are intertwined. Zachor and Shamor are intertwined. And what this teaches us is that women who are obligated in time-bound negative mitzvot, like don't violate Shabbos, don't cook on Shabbos, don't tie a kesher not on Shabbos, don't be 39 malachos, that is something that they have to do in addition to also the Zachor, which is connected, which is the Kiddush.
So Kiddush, the actual Kiddush prayer is the Zachor Shamor.
Yes. No, the Kiddush is the bracha. Ashir Kiddush Adam Mitzvah Ratz Lavana Shabbat Kachov Yavav Zonin Chilanu Zikaron LaMaaseh Bereshit Ki Yom Techil Mikra Kodesh Zech Letzavim. That's the bracha of Kiddush. Very paragraph. There's a preamble of Vayachulu. We'll talk about more in the coming simanim. There's a preamble.
So the issue we had before with Simeon saying that how can a woman because an obligation to hold Shamo?
She has an
Who has
equal.
obligation? Both of them has.
Both of them do,
So
but
how to-
we needed a special limud to tell me that women are obligated on a biblical level. Because otherwise, we would just apply the rule that women are always exempt from positive time-bound mitzvot. Kiddush on Friday night is a positive mitzvah and is bound by time. In order for me to say that women, or for Chazal to say that women are obligated, there needs to be a limud, some way from the Torah, a textual way from the Torah to bring it out that indeed they are. So how do we learn here that they are? Because of the connection of Zachor and Shamor. That teaches me that women are indeed obligated and they're not exempt in the midst of Kiddush. That makes sense? That textual connection is necessary. This is where Richie was referencing and Jeffrey as well, that by Megillah also that women should be a putter from going to Kriyas Megillah, because it's a positive time-bound mitzvah. But the rabbi said no. We obligate them as well because it's a mitzvah. There's a qualifier. They were an essential part of the miracle. They not just benefited from the fact that the Jewish people were saved, but as Richie pointed out, Esther was a very central character in the saving of the Jewish people. So therefore, women are also obligated in Kriyas Megillah, where other times they might have been off the hook.
But also, they're obligated, but they're not obligated.
Meaning they could simply just say the Vayachulu.
Say that they're obligated in the Megillah, so they're also going to be obligated in the Kiddush. And so the Kiddush men is that they're not obligated to make the bracha on reading the Megillah.
Correct. You're saying that they make if women read the Megillah, halacha l'maisa. I mean, if there was like a women's Megillah reading, by the way, which is not such a controversial, that would be very controversial, and halachically incorrect if women read for men for Megillah.
Even
but
if there's no man to read, the only person who can read the Megillah is a woman.
It's a really it seems like there's one.
The same thing.
No, a kiddush lechatchila, a woman could make a kiddush. Certainly, according to the Mishnah Berurah, by the way, within the household, certainly nobody has an argument that the wife can make for the husband. Yeah.
The woman, you could choose like, oh, let's do it. You do it.
Yeah, you could do rock paper scissors every Friday night. It's not a problem.
What if it's in public?
So that's why the chumrah that's quoted here by the Mishnah Berurah, it says zila milta. It's not becoming. It's not the thing to do. Now,
another point of information.
Yeah.
The Kiddush is made up of first the Eidos, which is by Hulu, and then the Brachos, right?
Yeah.
Which is the essential couture of the obligation of Zohar. Which paragraph?
I would say that if you ask the stam person, right? This goes to the question of kavana or not. If a person didn't have kavana to fulfill the mitzvah, and we say mitzvah strichos kavana, the people didn't have a kavana when they said vayachulu, as that's my obligation being fulfilled there, then mistama, it's always the bracha. Because the bracha, I understand, the bracha is a bracha, mitzvah. The bracha, mitzvah make a bracha. If they had kavana, or you say that, well, even without kavana you can fulfill the mitzvah, then it becomes a different situation. But even then, we're going to talk about this very shortly. If they have a different level of obligation, let's say, by the way, this is actually worse in some ways. Husband comes home, he davened in shul, he said Vayahu and everything. Twice. He said it twice in the shul. And she didn't daven. And that's right. And
3 times.
So she didn't daven for whatever reason. She's not obligated. He comes home. He, Midoraisa, has a check mark by his name. She did not. He now comes along and his motzi her. And the answer is that's fine, actually. But you would have thought, right? Right. The woman has the biblical chiyuv still, and he's coming along, having done kiddush like 3 times over already, and he's coming in here. That's not a halachic problem. Actually, we're going to spend a lot of time about in a couple of simanim why that's okay.
I thought it was
Yeah. Now, so he says Zila Milson. I wanted to just show you here the Mishnah over in that siman in Hilchos Purim First of all, the Shulchan Aruch says men and women are both obligated in Hakol Chav Mikriyasa, Anashim v'Nashim, the Gerim v'Avadim v'Shucharim, everybody. And then the Mishnah over there says, "V'after hakriya hi devar shazman grama mikol makom chayavos she'af hein hayu ba'oso hanes." Demitchila haisa gzera gam aleim. Haman didn't differentiate between men and women. All Jews, right? ולכן צריך האיש לקרוס בביתו ולפני הבשולות והמשרסות ובקצת מקומות נוהגים הם הולכות לבית הכנסת לעזרת נשים לשמוע הקריאה, אכן צריכים איך יוצאים שם נשים אי אפשר לשמוע שם. Alright, by the way, he says here that some places where women go to the Ezras Nashim to go hear Kriyas HaMegillah, and obviously those shuls, the ability to hear from the Ezras Nashim wasn't so good. And so the Mishnah Berurah says, I don't exactly know how they're sitting in the Ezras Nashim. The Yefshar Lishmoa Sham Kedin. You can't really hear it the right way because it's behind like a Mechitza Shel Barzel, on the third floor, whatever, So, but the point is that women need to hear it, but they are not able to be motzi men. It's not actually a matter of discussion, really. There is one source that seems to indicate that it would be okay, but it's really not. It's really not at all acceptable halachic practice. But so, what's the difference here? Why there is it no, but here yes? So the Aruch HaShulchan says ve'eino ikar the v'sham keven devarabim hu. Since the mitzvah of Kriyas HaMegillah, you want to talk about Zila Milsa? It's like not appropriate. So he says the Zila Milsa is only about. It's not what a woman's going to stand up in front of the Kehila, or stand up. It's not so. It's not what we do. Kevin Shekostus Atostus Sukkah Masha ain't came by Kiddush. By Kiddush, particularly that's where it's particularly when it's talking about just the household, husband and wife and kids around the table. There's no chumrah even. There's no chumrah because the whole Zila Milsa thing is right that a woman should do it in front of it. Now there are other issues with the woman getting up in front of the Kehila for Kriyas HaMegillah, but that is undoubtedly not a problem when it comes to Kiddush, particularly only in the household. And on this one, yeah.
We're talking about obligation. If you go back to the old schools in Eastern Europe,
Yeah.
The Ezras Nashim was an afterthought which was added later.
Right.
They didn't have it.
Right.
So
what do they do with it?
what do you do with a woman for reading all this? They probably wouldn't never participate.
For reading a Megillah.
Yeah.
So that's why the Mishnah. So that's why the Mishnah Berurah right before he says that some people have a minute to go to the shul, but to the Ezras Nashim. He says that's what before that he says he says that really a man who knows how to read Megillah, because the presumption was women didn't know. A man should read in his household for the Besulos. That means that the young women, the single women, is a daughter, is a 16-year-old daughter. He should read for his 16-year-old daughter. She has an equal chiyuv, and the mishartos, the women who are helping around the house, they're hired help. Presumably they're Jewish, right? Or they're avadim, by the way. If you avadim mishucharim, but whatever. So yes, that the shul part was like there are some people who go to shul. Like it was not the
women are obligated to hear it, but not to read it.
For Megillah.
Right.
Correct. That's the biggest thing here. The mitzvah, even think, right, correct, that women have an obligation to hear, men have an obligation to read. And therefore, women cannot be motzi men because their obligation is not non-existent and it's different. And that's why, by the way, they can make the brachos at the beginning of Kriyas. That's only paskin. I'm almost 100% sure. But they don't make the bracha at the end. If it's just a women's reading, they don't make the bracha at the end of the Kriyas HaMegillah. And I think that they do change the bracha. Because usually our bracha for Kriyas HaMegillah is Al Mikra Megillah, and I believe that if it's just a woman reading for herself or a few other women, that it's lishmoa. It's a change of a bracha. Therefore, men cannot. That's the problem. Here, though, everything is equal by Kiddush. There is no differentiation of text or what the obligation is. That's the problem with with Megillah, where it's a little bit different. Okay, and again, the problem here that's cited by the Chumrah relates to she's reading in public, and it's not what we do. Zila Milsa is like it's not what we do. So it's pasnished. Thank you. That's like we would say it's pasnished. You know, but again, but certainly within a household, it's not proper. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, yeah, Jeffrey.
There are a lot of households where a woman will say hamotzi.
Right.
It's surprisingly after reading this, they don't mean have never seen it say kiddush, but according to the Vilna, it seems like
Yeah, correct. But the Vilna Gaon never mentioned the Chumrah here, by the way. Correct. This is like there were a few Achronim who. Yeah. I mean, wasn't a switcheroo. The same calculation exists by Hamotzi, which is men and women have an equal chiyuv. When it comes to bracha on a typical Tuesday, right? If I'm sitting next to my wife and she's about to have a sandwich, and I'm about to have a sandwich, and we both wash at the same time, and we're sitting down together. There's really no reason she can't make. I could make hamotzi, and she could say amen to the bracha, and we both get our sandwiches. And the reverse really is true. We both have an equal obligation to make the.
Do you have to give her a piece of bread?
No.
Or you can just eat her.
No, not at all. No, we do it on Shabbos because everyone wants to partake of one of the two challahs, right? But if I'm having a sandwich and she's having a sandwich, I'm allowed to make a bracha rishona, and as long as I have in mind and she has in mind, and it's really the same calculation. Yeah. Okay. Sip. Simeon, go ahead.
There's a major difference between the Megillah and between Kiddush. Kiddush is midaraisa. The whole Megillah business is midarabanan.
No, 100%. And here it doesn't come down to the doraisa dorabanan. It's about if I can line it up that men and women have the exact same obligation, then, and which is not always the case, right? Because of mitzvah shazman grama, you can't always say that. But here you can. And so therefore, without qualification, the Shulchan Aruch says, the obligation is kemosam. Therefore, by letter of the law, there's nothing to talk about here. They have, she can discharge his obligation like he could discharge hers. It's not about Doraisa or Rabbanan. It's about, is the obligation the exact same? And the answer here is yes. Take a look at Sif Katan Hey. Since they're obligated on a Torah level. Lekaman b'simin reish ayin gimel sif dalad. We will talk about this more. There is a principle called Kol Yisrael Ha'Revim Zeh Lazeh, right? That all Jews are guarantors for one another, which means that if Richie is already done the mitzvah of, I'll use Kiddush as the example here. Richie already did the mitzvah of Kiddush. Richie already did the mitzvah of Kiddush. Richie's a nice guy, and I didn't do the mitzvah of Kiddush, and for whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe I don't know the bracha for Kiddush. That's usually the biggest problem when you need to help other people. Let's say I don't know the bracha of Kiddush. Richie's like, I'm sorry, I already did it. I can't help you. The answer is no, he can't help me. Even though he's discharged his obligation, he can help me discharge mine. Now that only works when we have the same level of obligation to start with. I mean, even though he's making Kiddush for me, he's done. But since we started with the same obligation, halacha is, we're going to see more about this in Reish Ayin Gimel, 2 simanim from now, he can be motzi me. That's a rule. So the Mishnah Berurah here is merely extending this rule, that even if she already made Kiddush, she has done the mitzvah, she's done. And then it turns out her teenage son, who's 16 years old, who didn't come home. He went out on Friday night and he said, I'm going to go to my friend's house. So he comes home at 10 o'clock at night after the meal's over. So, did you guys make Kiddush? Oh, no, we forgot to make Kiddush. Oh, we got so excited by whatever we were eating and playing a game. And we didn't make Kiddush? So she can then go ahead right then and there and make Kiddush for him. Because she has the same level of obligation to start with the as uh, as a man, and even though she's discharged her obligation, there's no difference.
Even on Shabbos day, where there is not still an obligation.
Shabbos day is a different animal, but
It's not an obligation to make Kiddush on Shabbos day.
it is an obligation, but it's not an obligation midoraisa. There's no mitzvah min haTorah to make Kiddush on Friday on Shabbos morning. There's a mitzvah midrabanan, and I think I believe that this is going to be talked. It will be talked about. I think it should. I think it's going to end up being exactly the same, but the level of obligation is certainly only midrabanan to make Kiddush. That's why it's called Kiddusha Rava. It's the great Kiddush because you know what it's the lashon of Taginar. All you need to do for the Kiddusha Rava. Bor Gafen. All the other stuff is just extra that we add. Shamar v'nei sales Shabbat, Tavshim v'Shabbat Fraglecha. It's all extra. If you just say Bor Gafen, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Bor Gafen, you fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush Shabbos for Shabbos day. No, it's Rabbi because it's great. It's a lashon taginor. It's trying to pump up the Kiddush because the Kiddush is not. It's core. It's great. I love the mitzvah, but it's just for a gafen. It's not like Kiddush on Friday night. I have a whole special bracha. It's the whole to do. Eidus. Yeah, Eidus. Shabbos day. It's for a gafen. So they called it the great Kiddush because they wanted to help the Kiddush feel better about itself. That's right. It gives it a little chashivus.
Right.
Correct. You give it a good name.
Different from a weekday or stuff like that.
Right. So he says here in the Mishnah Berurah, Inyan Kiddush Anoshim v'Noshim Shavim. When it comes to Kiddush, men and women are equal. And when one helps another friend with regards to the Kiddush, ABCs of the sugya of kavana. If you're going to help somebody else fulfill their mitzvah, you have to have it in mind as the one making the Kiddush, and the one listening has to have it in mind that they're being yotzei through the Kiddush, that they're what they're hearing. That's the ABCs. That's every sugya of when you're being motzi somebody else. Same thing here. And he says, it's right. I'm not saying you have to do it. He says it's nachon. It's right that the Baal Habayis, before he makes Kiddush, says, I have you in mind. Right? I have you in mind. And that they should have kavanah to listen to my bracha. Okay. Right, and that's where they talk about the whole Indian and Reish Ayin Gimel of being mostly other people. Even I believe if you're not fulfilling your obligation, and this will become an interesting. It will become an interesting question about what happens if you make Kiddush and you have no intention, because we're going to add in the wrinkle in a couple simanim of Kiddush from Kom Su'uda, Kiddush in the place where you eat. And if I'm being mostly somebody else for their mitzvah of Kiddush, but I don't end up eating there, can it work for the other person, even though I don't eat there, but they're going to eat there? That will be a discussion we'll have in Reish Ayin Gimel, so hang tight on that question. Sif Katan Vav. Kemosam. They have an obligation like them. Le'inyan zman yesh chiluk. De'veish zman chiyuv min haTorah hu kshu ben yud gimel. Uveisha kishnases bas yud beis. Az he mischayeves b'chol mitzvos. So here you have even the Mishnah Berurah is cleaning up one piece of information here. To say that men and women have an equal obligation, that their obligation across the board is equal, is actually not 100% true. Why? He points out because by the matter of time, that is different. A boy becomes obligated, a man becomes obligated at the age of 13 years old in this mitzvah min haTorah, and a woman becomes obligated in this mitzvah min haTorah at 12 years old. So there is one differentiation here about this halacha, and that is the time in which they become obligated on a Torah level. But that is merely, I don't want to say technical, but it is, meaning once a person is obligated midoraisa, then you're on the same playing field. That's all. Okay.
So,
yeah, Steve. Yeah, and then Simeon. So Steve go first. Yeah. Yeah.
So he quotes from the Shulchan Aruch. He says all this is fine.
Yeah.
Except right? כתב שלכתחילה אין להורות תן, לשאול הלכה למעשה.
What was that? Lishol?
Right, אין להורות תן.
Lishoel. Oh, to a person to ask you a question.
So
Right.
we've heard this before where,
Right.
and I wonder whether there's some.
Zilzul and mitzvos that
No. Yeah, it's okay, but you know what? We don't tell anybody.
we don't tell anybody. Yeah. Halacha ve'en morid came.
Why? I'm wondering whether there's somebody written about that.
I wonder if this in particular, yeah, that is an interesting question. I don't know if anybody's written about that, about halacha ve'en morid came. It comes up sometimes. The reason that you would do a halacha ve'en morid came is because there's a legitimate fear, and it has to be a legitimate fear that people will not understand. People will take something the wrong way or something like that. I remember there's an interesting. So I'm about to violate this rule, but the Gemara and the Mishnah and Gemara and Chulin, when it talks about Basar v'chalav, and the question comes up about about chicken, about Basar Of v'chalav. And anyone know the Psak Halacha of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili?
Yeah, he said it's okay.
He says okay.
Yeah.
Correct. And I believe somewhere there. Well, no, the Gemara mentions that we authored fowl with cheese, but in the town of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, I think that they did have, or he was the posek. I think that they did have chicken and cheese, right? So chicken parm was on the menu there, but it's one of those things that I can't remember where someone said you're not supposed to teach that. Why? Because it'll open up. I don't know. Use Pandora's box here, but it'll open up. Opens up a Pesach, here to. So if there's a fear that by passing in a certain way, it opens up other things which could be problematic, I could understand halacha ve'en morin game, because the general public may not have the knowledge, because they didn't come to the Sunday morning shir, to know sometimes the lines and the right from wrong. Then I could understand halacha ve'en morid came, but what you just mentioned there of zilzul doesn't sound to me like that, Steve. It sounds more like that people don't want to ask him like this because they think it's a zilzul. It's a zilzul for the, what do you say, zilzul for the mitzvahs or something like that. It's more like there's a discomfort of like women don't usually lead things. Here, it usually doesn't happen in Orthodox communities that women lead things, right? But therefore, if a shoel comes to ask you the question, because if you tell them that it's okay on this one, then they're going to say, "Well, Rabbi said it was okay on this, and not on that." Which, look, I'm not a posek, so like I don't answer questions like this. So, but there are definitely poskim who will say, okay, but that's why when you get asked a question by a shoel, you need to be very. It's important not to answer yes and no, because you can teach people things. I try to answer questions like this on my limited knowledge of when somebody asks me a question. Often I get questions around Pesach time, right? When Rabbi Morgenstern's inbox says, you get an auto reply from Rabbi Morgenstern's inbox, you've overstuffed my inbox, with Pesach questions. Please ask them now to Rabbi Klinger, right? So I sometimes get the overflow questions of Pesach. I will try to explain to people, why something is allowed or not allowed, because I want them to not just say yes, no, because then you're always dependent on me, but you can teach them a rule, right? You teach a man to fish, right? They can feed themselves, right? So my only question with the zilzul mitzvah approach is that if something is mutter, you have to be very careful when saying something that has been permitted by Torah law is to say that it is not permissible. Again, unless there's a good argument to say that this is going to lead to issues, but even me saying this and then they practice it more publicly and it'll lead to whatever. It's called, I think, the slippery slope argument, right? There is a time for a place for the slippery slope argument. I really do hear it.
I wanted to diverge a little.
Yeah. And then Simeon after. Yeah, go ahead. 1 second, Richie. Yeah.
So, Mr. Burr was written in the early 20th century.
Right.
And that was a time, I don't know, in Europe, but certainly here in the United States, England, there was a big suffragette movement, women's rights.
Right, correct.
Women's rights movement. So there was like I guess a need to kind of like address, women's roles in
Society, right.
in halacha, and they do address it. You see this in Aruch Shulchan, and you see it in Torah Tamima, all kind of like from that era.
Yeah,
You don't see it really in earlier works.
right.
That never came up. Why did
Right.
it never come up? Because women just did not have that cultural status in earlier generations.
Right.
In the last 100 years, the role of women in society has changed so much.
Right.
That
Correct.
these issues now are becoming really, really crazy issues,
Right.
even certainly within modern Orthodox.
Right.
Oh, dress codes.
Dress.
When they get rulings about wearing pants.
Yeah.
Someone has.
You're just even saying like women in terms of leadership roles, right?
Leadership,
right?
I mean,
Being
women are
Torah
partners
teachers.
in big law firms.
Right. Right, but I'm
which we
saying
didn't have 100 years
right.
ago.
We didn't generally have women who were able to
Women
give a
being
shir,
president,
right?
running for president of the United States, or
Correct, right.
They did a big law firm. He closed the door with the man.
Right, right.
The office.
Yeah, a lot has changed.
A lot has changed,
Yeah.
and I don't know if there's anybody today. Yes, in the modern Orthodox and in the kind of like the left side of the modern Orthodox world, they do address these issues, but there's just not enough address of it. By the way, I have to say, in my own personal experience, I once designed a home for a very famous Rav. Okay, and his wife was a very famous Rebbetzin, would tell me her feelings about certain halachas,
Right.
And she even told me she had trouble in the morning saying Shalom Asani Isha. And
Right.
her husband's like, one of the most revered,
Right.
leaders of the yeshiva
Yeah.
world,
And that's why I think it's important. But like, you cannot. No one is going to claim that the Shulchan Aruch, or the Aruch HaShulchan, the Mishnah Berurah were, are pushing the envelope because they're giving you the halacha. That's it.
But culture was changing in the 19th.
100%. Right, but it wasn't when the Shulchan Aruch and when the Gemara talks about this.
Yeah.
The Gemara was talking in a very legalistic way, very cold, not worried about anyone's feelings, and so I try to my best of my ability teach the halacha the same way, very cold, and I'm telling you what it says here.
So we're at a point in culture today where women want absolute equality with men.
And in an Orthodox world, at this time, it's going to be on tape. I'm just going to say it. In an Orthodox world, it's not going to happen. It's not. And I think that people who come in with the mindset that they're gonna find a way to call. I have all the sympathy to those who want to try to sort of bend the halachic system to make. I get where they're coming from. I really do. But you're not going to find that if you're. Again, we're looking for halacha on Sundays and Mishnah Berurah. You're not going to find that. But again, where halacha allows for for certain things, I'm just reading the words. Yeah, I mean, like I don't. That's why I'm like, the Zilzul piece, like
Daf Yomi this week was all about Panos Shlavcha.
There you
go. And the whole idea of what the Havamina is with Yerusha, and the Havamina is that the men and women are equal, but there are in the way the Gemara goes into it. I mean, it's really complicated,
right?
And that was
and
that's based on certain shitos that Moshe Rabbeinu had. At the very, very beginning of Jewish halacha,
right?
How to handle issues with women who legitimately had
claim.
Yeah.
Simeon, go ahead. I know you wanted to ask. Go ahead.
Yes. Rav, you taught in a recent earlier shir about the notion of reciting Kiddush in shul. Now that we no longer have guests living there, we don't have that Makom Seudah.
Right.
So the man already said Kiddush.
Yeah.
Now he comes home and his wife hasn't said Kiddush. Does she have a priority position to say Kiddush for everybody before him?
No. there's none, and we'll see more about that in Reish and Gimel. We're going to see why, because even though one person, in this example, the husband has fulfilled his mitzvah in shul, nonetheless, because of the principle of arvus, he is able to be motzi all the members of his household who have not fulfilled the mitzvah yet, even though he's done. And because otherwise, and this is something actually we're going to see very soon. It's in Reish and Gimel. Otherwise, I think our Shulchan writes this. I was reading yesterday when I was last night preparing. He says, if that were the case, maybe actually in this statement he writes it. He says, if that were the case, he says it here actually. He says, if that were the case, lo matzanu yadeinu v'ragleinu b'chol hamishpachos she'abal habayis mekadesh motzi ishto uvnosav v'kalosav. How in the world could every family, the husband comes home, the Baal Habayis comes home, and about 99.9% of households, the husband makes the kiddush, he's mostly the wife, he's mostly the sons, he's mostly the daughters-in-law who didn't go to shul either, right? They didn't daven, right? And they have a biblical obligation still. And so he says, Birchas mitzvah in general, one can be motzi his friend and help him fulfill his mitzvah. Because we are all guarantors for each other, and when our obligations are on an equal level for mitzvahs, you, Simeon, can help me, and I can help you. It's a beautiful concept that we have in halacha.
But did you just sow the seeds for Birkas Hamazon with a woman leading?
No, I think there it's a big problem because her obligation in Birkas Hamazon is questionably deoraisa. There's a suffix deoraisa by her obligation. It's not clear if she has the deoraisa or derabanan obligation, and therefore she cannot say Birkas Hamazon for a man. But
they have a small bracha for women. It's not the same as we talk about.
I mean, a zimun.
Ah.
Are you saying by a zimun for women?
No, Birkat Hamazon for women. There's a bracha for women which is smaller than. So I don't know.
Really?
The same. I don't know. I saw it in it.
Huh? I'm not aware. That is. No, it's only 8:30. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, but you gave a very good answer because remember, it's an aseh shehazman groma midoraisa, from which the woman is patur. Yes.
Birkas Hamazon?
Yes.
I don't let Birkas Hamazon means the mitzvah shehazman groma because it's not dependent upon time. It's dependent on food. It's from the Torah for sure. But the question it comes up in brachos. I'm blanking now, honestly, Simeon.
Okay.
It's about, but there's a suffix about whether their level of obligation is doraisa or derabanan. Meaning, but it's not because of. I don't think it's because of mitzvah shazman grama. I think because eating is not dependent upon time. The benching is dependent upon about the topic of eating. I have to look that one up. It's in brachos now daf chaf.
The Friday night kiddush. So it purposely, in shul, which is where you would hear, it's not like Shabbos kiddush where people go to a kiddush before. The person who makes kiddush shul is really in for visitors, so not going to be
right.
And he purposely gives it to the children to avoid him fulfilling, if he can. He doesn't. There's no kids. He has to drink the wine. But if there are kids, he purposely doesn't do it. So when he goes home.
Well, but two things. So the pair, even just the recitation of Vayachulu on Friday night, may be enough to discharge the obligation. It doesn't have to be the bracha per se. And then his obligation, because like I'll use Yom Kippur from a few weeks ago as an example. We didn't make Kiddush on Yom Kippur. Okay, hopefully nobody had to make Kiddush on Yom Kippur. Okay, but you still fulfilled your mitzvah of Kiddush Midoraisa. Why? We were very insistent that after Shemon Esrei was over, we still said Vayachulu Hashemayim, even though there was no Vayachulu in the Shemon Esrei, right? We said Vayachulu, and that fulfills the mitzvah of Midoraisa of Kiddush, because Kiddush is just bidvarim. You just speak about the sanctity of Shabbat. I literally use the words from the Torah, the seventh day of creation. That's good enough. So, yeah. So that's the problem. That many men now they come down to kavana, right? When we were saying it this year in particular, I had kavana when we were saying Vayachulu that night, thinking about this, all what we were learning. But yeah, that's what the Aruch HaShulchan was talking about. Now take a look at Sif Gimel. Okay, the Shulchan Aruch here says in ein yadom maseges Sif Gimel in ein yadom maseges liknos yayin lekiddush ulahachin sarchei seuda lichvod halayla v'lichvod hayom v'lekiddush hayom. So we should never know of such things in our lives, and those who we know who are in such a situation, we should try to help them so that this is not a halachic shaila. So I'd like to say that this is maybe theoretical, but it's not, because there are Jews through the ages who have had, and to this day, who have to make these kind of calculations, even if we're not aware of it. And if it's not relevant, hopefully to anyone we know, at least we learn about priorities. The case is a person doesn't have enough money to buy wine for Kiddush on Friday night. Grape juice can count as wine here for these purposes. Thank you for clarifying that. So they don't have enough money to purchase wine for Kiddush and to prepare a meal, a Shabbos meal for nighttime, and not enough to prepare a meal for the daytime, and for Kiddush Hayom, meaning Kiddush in the morning. So now what do I do? Where do I spend my money? These are my choices. I have limited funds, and now I have to make choices. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins mutab sheyikne yayin lekiddush halayla ima sheyachin sarche haseuda or ima sheyikne yayin letzorech hayom. Says the choice is Kiddush on Friday night. That's I should purchase the wine. And one issue that we'll get into when we get to the Mishnah Berurah is, but I thought that wine is just midrabanan. Right? Why should the wine for Kiddush on Friday night get a better treatment? I'll say this. I'll say Vayachulu. I'll say the bracha of Kiddush, and also
Kiddush on the bread.
and you also can say Kiddush on Challah if you don't have wine. But this is not ideal. So if I don't have wine, I can't make the Kiddush on Challah. So if I have limited funds, wouldn't I want to actually buy wouldn't I want to go to the bakery exactly and buy a challah, right? Instead of buying the bottle of wine, right? Good, excellent. We're going to delve into those questions in the Mishnah Berurah. But let's keep reading the Shulchan Aruch.
What about the day? Say the days from the
Kiddush for the day,
so,
yeah.
They're not referring to the day.
Kiddush of daytime is
day and night. So that's what I'm saying.
that's for the meal, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
Sarchei
if you
Suda.
have a choice, you just buy the evening, the Shabbat, Friday night, not the day.
Correct. Friday night Kiddush. Correct. Friday night Kiddush is what we prefer to buy. Right? Buy the wine for the.
Also the day.
Yeah, that's also part of the calculation, but I'm not buying enough. Obviously, if I have enough wine, if I'm buying wine and it happens to be more in the bottle for the next day, great. But let's say I can only buy, those like grape juice pack, I don't have enough money for just that, or a challah, whatever it is. Like, hey, if it's my money is mitzum tzam, I have very, can only buy, again, hopefully it's a theoretical question, not a real question, but that's a priority. But then the Shulchan Aruch, almost like he's a Gemara here, I love this. He quotes the Mabraisa. V'hadetanya k'vod yom kodem l'kvod laila, but the honor of the day comes before the honor of the night. Right? I should make sure that my meal on Shabbos day is supposed to be a fancier meal than the Friday night meal. Okay, that's an important principle. That's specifically when I have other needs for the Suda that are met. Right? So here I'm talking about literally a piece of bread. I'm talking about the minimum to the bare minimum. So when should I if I have I could make a cholent for Friday night, or I can make it for Shabbos day. Not doing it both. I have one crock pot. Make it for Shabbos day. And maybe that solves two birds. That solves two problems, because it's easier to make a cholent for Shabbos day. Well, let's say I have grilled chicken that I made. Should I serve? I only have enough to serve either for tonight or tomorrow morning, or for tomorrow lunch? Tomorrow lunch. You'll figure out, the menu, but like the Shabbos lunch should be more kavodic than the Friday night meal. Friday night should be really nice too. But if I'm making choices,
So why do you think Kvod Yom?
Kvod Yom Kodem L'Kvod Laila.
Why is it saying? We said that the Kiddush for the day is not as important as the.
Here,
Friday night.
here.
Why is people pushing the day? If you think about it, it says also the Yom. Why is it?
Right.
It making sense.
Why is the concept that Yom is before Lila? Okay, good. We're gonna explore that in a moment. Good question. Excellent question. Why is Kvod Yom?
Yeah, and it's
Second is the Suda,
Right. So part of it is also right. So part of it is that the Yom is the time when the Korban Musaf would have been brought. The Yom is the time that the action is happening on Shabbos. People in general had bigger meals. I saw this. Was looking at because I had the same question. Why is Kavod Yom? People generally, their nighttime meals in general, not just on Shabbos. Nighttime meals were they weren't the highlight part of the day. The meal in the middle of the day. This is very different than America today. Nowadays, people eat dinner and it's like the feast of the century, right? And then you have snack at 10 o'clock because it wasn't good enough at 7 o'clock and you had, whatever. But I think in actually many cultures, even just to this day, right? I even recall, my father was from France, like dinner was not the biggest meal of the day, even in France. Like that was the smallest meal. Your lady, the big meal was the daytime meals. So the same concept goes here, but also it's tied a little bit halacha to the Karbonos Hayom were brought during the day. And it's sort of in celebration of the uniqueness of the day that surrounds the Karbonos of Shabbos. So the meal of the day should be celebrated with even more pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, that's interesting because in Israel, the main meal is actually during the day.
That's right, correct. Oh, in Israel.
In Israel,
dinner is light. That's right, in Israel. Light dinner. Yeah. That's right.
They have siesta.
Right.
Practical.
I guess that just came from.
Yeah, why is it
In the
there?
old days,
Because we're working.
I remember they had, what they called siesta. People who work not far from home.
Right. You went home in the middle of the day.
Middle of the day for lunch.
Yeah, they had a good lunch and cooked lunch.
Yeah, they had a good lunch, and they went back to the work, whatever it was.
Right.
They worked till later in the evening, then went home, had a snack, and went to sleep.
Right.
Yeah.
Here,
we work until
you go to work. You take a train, whatever. It takes an hour to get to work.
Then you have your steak at night.
So during the day you don't have,
That's right. You can't make the steak during the day.
Yeah,
Correct. You can't have time to do this.
Have a good lunch. So you come home.
I wonder if it came from that point, like Kiddush Hayom or.
I think it might be also because there was a time when everybody was already, Friday night. People are tired, and you're not saying you shouldn't have a nice meal, but. You got ready.
Friday was the exception.
You were
Friday. You had it at night.
Yeah.
Friday light lunch. Right.
Right.
Friday was always
the exception. Interesting. We're going to talk more about that though. But anyways, they said, "Ella kos echad lekiddush." But here's the thing, he says. But if you only have enough for 1 cup of wine, I don't have enough to even buy food. Maybe I have some crackers somewhere in the closet, in the pantry. So then, Kvod Laila Kodem L'Kvod Yom. Then, if I can only afford 1 cup of wine, better that I make Kiddush on Friday night because that is a deoraisa. And again, all these are just theoretical discussions because we should know such things. And again, we should try to help people not be in these positions if we know other people who are. We'll stop here. What we're going to do next week, we'll read the Mishnah Berurah, who gets into the whole question that we talked about, which is, but what about the challah? I could buy a challah. Does the challah help me? Then I 2 birds with 1 stone situation here. Or at least I get some bread, and okay, I can make kiddush over the challah. So we'll explore that, and we'll talk about the Yom versus Laila in general. Why is it that the kiddush hayom that the meal of the daytime gets preferential treatment over the night meal? And then we're going to get to a very difficult rule, which is very relevant every week on Friday night, about whether or not you can have water. But you can have water, a sip of water before you make Kiddush on Friday night, because it's not so good. It's a giveaway that it's usher really to even litaom afilu mayim.
To even take Shabbat the same thing before you make.
I would say Shabbat. You're really supposed to make Havdalah before you have anything else go into your mouth. The same really also is going to go on Shabbos morning too. After you daven Shachar, you're not supposed to eat until you make Kiddush, which will lead to a whole parsha about how come sometimes there are balei kriya who are taking sips of water.
So we have made Kiddush. Rabbi's making Kiddush. So he said that.
Well, once you make Kiddush in shul, that's fine. Kiddush, you go nuts to Kiddush, at the food with the
but
food.
it's not to you. Then you have to go home and make Kiddush. So how does it
That Kiddush should work as long as I eat mazonos. If I have some cake or crackers or cookies, then I can have that Kiddush is good. I can actually go home at that point and just start with hamotzi.
You don't need the schnapps before you take the coffee.
That's right. The coffee and tea will be interesting. We'll talk about the coffee and the tea and what will happen after I daven shachar. Can I have the coffee and tea that's sitting out here after I daven shachar? Before shachar, to drink the cake is interesting. That's a whole shayla. But the coffee and tea, even Rav Moshe was already of the opinion that before davening, I could have coffee and tea because it wakes you up or whatever. But the problem is after davening shachris, before making kiddush, I have to have musaf and everything. And I believe this is where the genesis of the Kiddush Club comes from, because davening on Shabbos morning in many places used to be long, and there is an inyan of eating or drinking, not drinking alcohol. I'm just saying, like putting something in your body before chatzos hayom. And I remember the days of old when I was a kid, where davening would go sometimes. It started at 9 and went till 12 o'clock. And the rabbi would darshan for 45 minutes. When I was a young kid. I was an older rabbi, and he was from the old guard. He was like, of the sort of Rabbi Norman Lamb era, where you darshan for 40 minutes. And you didn't get to Kiddush, saying the shul Kiddush, until it was 12 o'clock. Well, sometimes 12 o'clock is, as we're going to see when we change the clock in a few weeks, 12 o'clock sometimes is, you're cutting it close with Chatzos Hayom. So I wonder if Kiddush Club started, from a halachic place.